Hello and we good? Okay, hello. Welcome to the regular scheduled meeting of the Morro Bay Planning Commission on Tuesday, December 19th, 2017. At this point, we have 4 commissioners here, so we have a quorum, so I call the commission to order. Could we please have a moment of silence? All right, thank you very much. And at this point, please rise, face the flag, and begin the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you. And do we have any planning commissioner announcements at this time? Jesse? Michael? Okay. At this point, this is the time for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on matters that are not on the agenda may do so at this time. Seeing I pretty much recognize everybody in the audience, I don't think we have anybody here. So we'll move on to presentations. For this evening, we have no presentations scheduled, so we're moving right along. So we have next is the consent calendar. We have A1 and A2. Does anybody wish to pull any of the items on the consent calendar?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. I have one item of discussion. Is just Scott on the planning list. It looks like we have 321 Rennell. Was that the garage that was converted? And is that coming back to a new, or it's the bottom one on page 1?
We just received the application for it.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I think we got it about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Maybe a week ago.
I was kind of wondering what happened with that, whether it was going to come back to us or it was going to.
So they submitted their application, and I think it's got a secondary dwelling unit thing associated with it, I think. And is that the right one?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, their applications. They submitted their application recently. Like I said.
Okay. Great. Thanks. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none? Motion's approved. Okay. Welcome. We're glad you made it, Richard. Okay, you got here for the most important part. So this is, and now we'll have public hearings. We have item B1, case number UPO 480 and CPO 543, 301 Seashell Cove, Morro Bay. So do we have Cindy, do you have the staff report on that?
I do. I'll be giving the presentation tonight. The staff report was written by Whitney McIlvain, one of our other planners. She was unable to make it tonight, and so I'll be making the presentation for the Planning Commission, and it's good to see you all tonight. I'm going to walk through this. This is going to be a brief presentation. Since the staff report was released on Thursday, the staff recommendation, which is noted in your staff report to recommend approval, has changed, and I'll be outlining why. Staff is recommending that the project be continued to a date certain due to an encroachment into the development limit line, and I'll go through that, what that means, but it's come to staff's attention that the project is not consistent with the tract conditions for Tract 2870, and Whitney has prepared some slides for us that I'll walk you through right now. So, but then in addition to that, because the applicant is here and because this was a duly noticed public hearing, at the conclusion of my presentation, I would recommend that the Planning Commission open the public hearing as it was noticed, in case there's anyone interested in speaking on the matter, and also provide some feedback to the applicant. If the Commission recalls, Lot 4 of the subdivision came to the Planning Commission in 2015, and it was continued to a date uncertain back then, and the Planning Commission had some comments about that particular lot. Given that is the same applicant, I think it would benefit if the Commission has some feedback tonight that can be incorporated into the resubmittal, should the Commission decide to continue the hearing. So this is 301 Seashell Cove. The application is for construction on Lot 1 of a new single-family home, approximately 2,700 square feet with a 586 square foot garage. Because it is in a planned development overlay, per our code, it requires both a conditional use permit and a coastal development permit. The star on the screen there shows the location of Lot 1, which is closest to Teresa Drive, and you also see in white outline the approximate location of the other 9 lots. And I'm going to try to operate this thing. What? Oh. Okay. So forgive the technical difficulties. A little bit of a pause here. Okay, got it. Okay. So moving on with the presentation, here's a slide depicting the zoning. As I just said, it's in a planned development overlay. The zoning for this lot is RA. Okay. The project was approved. This subdivision is Tract 2870. The subdivision was approved in 2009. The tract improvements themselves were completed in 2014. And for each of these 10 lots, the way that the subdivision was approved is that each of the 10 lots would require a coastal development permit and a conditional use permit approval to come back before the Planning Commission, similar to how it's done at the Cloisters. Some subdivisions, those permits are handled with the subdivision approvals. This Tract 2870 requires each and every one of the 10 lots to come back before the Planning Commission. And in addition to those tract approvals, the method of development for each of the lot is prescribed in 3 different ways. So what you are looking at on the right is the tract, and then here's Lot 1. I'm going to do my best to explain this here. On the left is a blow-up of Lot 1, and this is an image from the vesting tentative tract map that was approved. Each of the lots has a development limit line. Inside of the development limit line is a floating bubble, which is your building envelope of approximately 6,600 square feet. Inside of the building envelope is your building footprint. With each of the development on each of these lots, once the building envelope is established, the remaining portion of the lot is conditioned to be put into conservation open space. In this situation, on the tentative tract map, it's showing a 50-foot setback from top of bank, because Lot 1, and I didn't mention this earlier, but lots 1, 2, and 3 are in the coastal appeals jurisdiction. Our city's local coastal program requires that for ESHA, that the setbacks be 50 feet from top of bank. That's top of bank from obviously the near side of the bank. The way that the map was approved is it shows this straight line as the 50-foot line, demonstrating that that's your 50-foot setback, and then this area here is Lot 1, which would be your buildable envelope. But in this case, this dotted line right here is also denoted as the center line of the creek. So it would appear that there was some mislabeling that showed that the 50-foot from top of bank was on the other side of the center line of the bank. Be that as it may, there are clear tract conditions in this tract that require, because ESHA is dynamic and it can change over time, that all development consistent with our local coastal program be required to set back 50 feet from top of bank. Okay? So the way that the plans were drawn up, there is an 18, on the south side of the lot, there is a requirement in the tract that there be 18 feet as part of the development limit line, which is that area that converts to conservation open space upon permitting. And that's why the green arrow is pointing to open space. So that's 18 feet. The remaining 16 feet is due to a public utility or public utility easement.
Public utility and access easement.
And
for the
access,
road, right?
yeah, for the road. So that 34-foot line is measuring to the center line of the street, okay? So here we have 34 feet on the south side, and then it's showing 50 feet, but it's, it's showing 54, but it's also showing it from the other side of the center line. So if you go to the next slide, what you're looking at here in red is what the applicant has submitted as their building envelope, and that's in red. What came to staff's attention when after the staff report was released is that, in fact, the building envelope extends 4 feet beyond the development limit line. And per the tract conditions, you cannot develop in the development limit line. And so they are showing a 4-foot encroachment on the south side of the property line. They're at 30 feet. They should be at 34 feet. The green lines show that, as I just explained, the 18-foot wide area of open space that is beyond the eastern side of the development limit line. Although the map was recorded showing the setbacks here, it does not preclude that there is a condition in the tract that requires it to be set back 50 foot from the top of bank. So what we have are plans before the Planning Commission that encroach into the development limit line, and so staff cannot recommend approval tonight, but we do want to walk you through what the applicant has proposed, open the public hearing, hear from the applicant, their representative, and then seek to get input from the Planning Commission. I'll move on to some slides that we had prepared showing the house. This is a photo simulation not in the cul-de-sac, but on Teresa Drive, looking to the northwest. As the plan shown, the architecture is a modern and minimalist design, very simple with the cedar siding, multiple shed roofs. There are some deep roof overhangs on the south side of the home. To the southeast, still on Teresa Drive, this is the home they are showing to the southeast. And so the creek there would be on the left side of the screen. The site plan shows the home, as I just showed you on the earlier PowerPoint slide depicting the site plan. The garage would be on the east side of the property. And there's depicted with the floor plan. East and south elevations. North and west elevations. Showing you some more of that architecture design. The project applicants submitted some color and material boards, and this is what you're seeing on the screen. There are green build features such as solar panels and added insulation. The applicant submitted a, excuse me a second. Okay, yes, building energy analyst report, and also Title 24, which showed that this would exceed Title 24 requirements, current requirements, by 26%. As I've already stated, the staff recommendation is that the Planning Commission hear testimony from the applicant and the public, provide comments and directions on the project, continue the hearing to a date certain to allow the applicant to make corrections and revisions to the project plans. And in addition, I also wanted to point out, too, staff has recommended certain conditions with some issues that remained in the project. Those were noted on pages 4 and 5 of the staff report in red. There are some conditions that the Planning Commission should take note of, which would include Condition 15 regarding prohibiting development outside the building envelope. I just walked through that in the presentation. No grading allowed outside of the building envelope. That's consistent with the Seashell Estates Design Manual, Section 6.5, and tract conditions, as well as the stream buffer. And I've gone over the stream buffer requirements for this project as adjacent to ESHA. And then also there are some encroachments with the garage. Staff is recommending that the garbage collection, the refuse containers be placed outside the garage so that there's the minimum 20 by 20 free and clear dimensions that we require for parking. And then also does not meet the 5-foot setback on the east side. So essentially what staff would be recommending is that the home gets shifted a bit to the west and to the north so that it complies with the tract conditions. And I think I'll leave it at that. I'm available to answer any questions. That concludes the presentation.
Okay. At this point, does anybody have any ex parte communications to report?
No.
Okay. Do we have questions for staff? Michael?
Cindy, I think you said it does have solar, but I'm thinking it does not from the documents. There's no solar power associated with this project. Is there? I thought on the roof plans.
My understanding is that there is
Yes, okay.
solar. I'll let the architect speak to that. I would add that during the submittal requirement and processing of this application, staff gave feedback to the applicant about, although this is a different lot, but the direction was take the feedback that you learned from the Planning Commission in 2015 on what was given with Lot 4, which was at that time the Commission's direction was provide more energy savings with the lot, increase your green building features, and show how you're meeting that direction when you bring forward application for Lot 1.
I'm a little confused on one thing, if I may. We talked about north and east. So the plot plan I have on page C1 of the architect's plans shows the garage is on the north side. Is that correct? Or is it you said it was on the east, but is it on the north?
No, it's not. That's not correct.
Am I looking at that wrong?
No, you're looking at it right. The plan's labeled incorrectly.
I think the north arrow is just pointing in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, took me a little time to get the elevations oriented correctly because of the north arrows. Okay, Michael, is that all the only questions? Richard?
Hi, Cindy. Could you, when I looked at this, I'm a little, the 50-foot setback and the ESHA, the dynamic ESHA, okay, and the creek. Can you maybe explain that a little bit more for me?
Sure thing. So I'll go back to that slide here.
Thanks.
So just to start out with, the city's LCP requires that ESHA setback, which this property is adjacent to ESHA on the north side, requires a 50-foot setback from top of bank. And so the way that is interpreted is it's from top of bank closest to the development. Whitney had an analogy for me with this, and it's a little silly, but it visually it makes a lot of sense. So imagine this like Russian dolls, where they nest inside of each other. So you have your development limit line, which is the biggest area. Then you have your building envelope, and then inside of the building envelope is your building footprint. On this particular property, when they approved the map, which is Exhibit F in your staff report, the vesting tentative map, they show 54 feet from top of bank, but they're pointing to a straight line on the map. And as the commission will recall from many previous ESHA projects that it has reviewed, ESHA is variable and it's dynamic and it's almost never mathematically rigid. But yet, that's how the map was shown, and this is the map that was recorded in 2009. I think when the Planning Commission approved this in 2009, though, it recognized that ESHA can grow. I mean, there could be willow trees there. The willows get, that's an indicator of ESHA vegetation. And as they grow, ESHA's dynamic, and you might have different ESHA boundaries in 2009 than in 2039. So thus the condition, which is new development must be set back 50 feet from top of bank. So the map was recorded, but they still have this requirement that they have to set their development back. The plans don't show that. Do you want to?
And so on the exhibit, now my thing's not working. So now they identify the edge of bank here, and they have their 50-foot setback. But part of the problem is there's setback requirements from the improvements that are on this side as well. And so there ends up being a 4-foot bust in the numbers based on the amount of open space area that they're supposed to have. The exhibit that was provided, and I think it's on the previous slide, and what Cindy was referring to is this exhibit here, and it has this 54-foot setback that doesn't really go to anything because it goes to the property line. It's not measuring to bank, so the exhibit itself is a bit confusing. And then there's the piece over here that talks about, I think it's 18 feet to the back of the curb. Yeah, back of the curb. And so when we started putting the math together on it, we realized that there was again a bust in the number of 4 feet, and so that ends up being the issue. Cindy's correct in that we have our ESHA requirements, and each one of these houses on its own is supposed to come back and has to meet the requirements from our ESHA policies, which is the 50-foot setback from the top of bank. And they've accurately identified what that is. It's just they didn't account for the other setback coming back from the center line of the street and the 18-foot for the open space area that's supposed to be on the other side of the home, which would be on the south. Or I guess east. That north arrow on the plans might actually be correct. The road does shift over there, and so that could actually be north. Thinking about it, I was trying to look it up on my phone, but couldn't get my map to come up. So that might actually be correct, because I know the road does turn over there, so it is angled away from, like, you don't traditionally think from the coast is west and then north,
Yeah.
but the road turns once you get into town, right?
Okay.
So
That's going to be a good question for the applicant.
yeah, so I think you might actually be correct. Thinking about where we were at, I don't think you made a mistake. I think you might be right. So.
Okay, you good? Joe?
I always assume that.
Just two quick questions. The recommendation of a window in the garage, I was assuming that was to make it more efficient in terms of conserving electricity, more natural light in the garage. Is that the rationale for it?
Yes.
And then I was not a little bit, considerably befuddled by the issue, that noise issue. Was the state of California saying that it's actually unhealthy for anyone to be on that sort of front patio for a prolonged period of time vis-a-vis the noise level? Is that what I'm getting from that? And I was trying to figure out what conclusion to draw from that.
So through the CEQA, through the CEQA process, as it relates to noise, you need to have outdoor activity areas that aren't subject to noise increase, or to noise levels above, what is it, 60? Is it 65? I forget the number now. I apologize. And so they created an outdoor patio area that's on the inland side of the home that complies with the noise requirements. Anything that's facing the highway, especially anything that's facing the highway and then covered, is going to be noisier because it'll actually catch sound and wouldn't be compliant, and so becomes an issue from the CEQA standpoint from complying with noise requirements. So they're fine. They can have the extra patio as long as they have at least one outdoor activity area that complies, and they do. But it is a finding under CEQA. If that was the only one that they had, they would have to be looking at putting glazing up in front of it or something for noise attenuation purposes. Otherwise, it would be considered a significant impact under CEQA.
Does that? I'm always concerned about subsequent owners and notice and all that. So does that situation get somehow recorded in title so subsequent owners are available, are able to know that? No?
No. I mean,
Okay.
it's part of the conditions of approval, and that runs with the property. I mean, anybody that were to buy a house could come in and get the conditions of approval from the city to look at them.
Jesse?
No, I'm sorry. I talked out of turn earlier, so
Okay,
got my
that's
question
fine.
answered.
Okay, Cindy, on Exhibit C, is this a controlling document? They mention, to piggyback on Michael's question, they mention I think it's a solar PV system. Reform allows for good sun exposure. Roof-mounted solar panels. A solar PV system will be installed. Size of system is based on an average household of similar size and moral bank capacity to offset the charging of electric car. So is this a controlling document for the CUP or CDP?
No, and can I just ask you, is your microphone on? Your voice seems lower than everyone else's.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry
all right.
about that.
No, this is an exhibit, Exhibit C that the applicant provided, and it's just a delineation of the features that they're stating that they've provided in their submittal, and basically in response to the comment earlier that you were the applicant in 2015. You've already heard from the commission once about Lot 4. How can you take that and inform your application for Lot 1? So the applicant's architect is here, and he could probably speak to the green features.
Okay, because I didn't see, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I was straining to hear.
Yeah. I didn't see any notification on the plans for a PV system or a location for it on the roof plan or anything. So I was wondering if this was valid as a controlling document.
I mean, it certainly could be. The Planning Commission could condition it, that be a controlling document. They do have a condition in the resolution. I am not seeing, condition 22 talks about green building. Oh, okay. The project shall include all of the components outlined and included as part of Exhibit C. So my apologies, that's actually already covered as condition 22. So then, yes, therefore, this would be a controlling document.
Okay, great, yeah, because I didn't see the rainwater storage on the landscape plan either.
I'm sorry, say that
I didn't
again?
see the rainwater storage location on the landscape plan either. Oh, it's in the garage, it's not underground, yeah. You're right, I remember that.
And it's in the
now.
garage.
And and all of those sort of green components of the project are referenced starting on the bottom of page 6 and extending over to page 7 of the staff report.
Okay.
There is reference a couple different times in there.
Okay, great. Okay, any further questions for staff? Okay. At this time, we'll open it up for public comment and call the applicant forward. Please state your name.
Good evening, Chair of the Board of Commissioners. My name is Kathy Novak, and I'm here this evening representing Al Marshall, who is staged for this project.
Hold on a second. We're hearing from the... Do we have a technical problem?
Okay.
Please start again.
Sounds like
Sorry.
the mic might be a little hot, too. So, good evening, Kathy Novak again. Staff has provided a detailed report on the subdivision, the specific design components for this home, special studies, and other pertinent information. So I'm going to forego that part and focus my presentation on the specific comments and conditions that are in your staff report. First, there's a chart beginning on page 4 of your report that I will use for my upcoming comments. Staff has noted a comment under the interior north side yard setback. It indicates that there is a different dimension between the architectural and landscaping plans. While the landscape plan does not have dimensions noted, the architectural plans do, and that should be used for the proposed project. Next, under building footprint/envelope, staff notes that the track map conditions requiring fencing and flat work other than the driveway to be within the building envelope as shown on the landscape plan. First, we are using the architectural plans for the proposed project and defined building envelope area. We are currently showing the fencing and flat work outside the building envelope area, so we will remove that portion from the plans to make it consistent. Since we propose to modify the plan accordingly, then I would ask the Commission to modify condition number 15 and delete the sentence that begins with, quote, shift the building envelope to the south, etc., end quote, as that will no longer apply. Next, under garages/driveway, the report notes the driveway entrance width exceeds guideline standards because it includes the curb transitional areas. The driveway design for this home was drawn at a 20-foot width primarily for access for the parking space located in front of the garage. There's an approximately 15-foot from the back of the driveway apron to the parking space, so if the driveway is narrowed to 16 feet, it will all be impossible to access this parking space without driving over dirt or landscaped area along the side of the driveway. The driveway cut was constructed at 16 feet to minimize the curb cuts along the cul-de-sac. However, it was anticipated that the driveway modifications would be allowed depending upon the appropriateness for each individual project. The design guidelines do allow for modification when it's authorized by the city and the property owner. In this particular case, the additional driveway width to 20 feet makes sense and is still consistent with the design guidelines where it states it will not exceed 20 feet. The transitional area in the back of the apron was designed with city standards in mind and created an approximate 4-foot walkable area since this side of the cul-de-sac does not have any pedestrian walkway. So with that in mind, I would ask the Commission to modify condition number 20 by deleting the first 2 sentences and leaving the remaining sentence that requires the driveway surfacing to be an approved porous material. Next is the private yard fenced. This is condition number 15, which I have shared with you that the fenced area will be removed, so therefore the condition shall be modified accordingly. Next is the landscaping. We will correct the landscaping plans to match the architectural plans and submit the revisions at the time of building permit as per condition number 10. Next, I'd like to discuss the comments under the staff recommendations and the conditions of approval. First, on page 7 under garage, the design guidelines require the trash containers not be visible from the neighbor's property or road. The proposed project has the containers located inside the garage to eliminate any visual concerns. The recommendation to relocate the containers in an enclosure outside of the garage is not, in our opinion, a good idea. Many homes use their garage for storing the trash containers, so that doesn't make this home any different. In addition, if the containers are relocated outside, a special enclosure attached to the garage must be built, which will result in modifications to the design and an impractical use of the building site area. Condition number 21 requires a 20-foot by 20-foot clear for parking inside the garage, and we can do that easily by relocating the water heater, so there is no reason to relocate the garbage containers or other utility systems or fixtures outside of the garage. While I'm on condition number 21, I would also like to ask the Commission to delete the first sentence that requires more lateral light into the garage. There is a 3-foot by 4-foot window proposed in the design on the back of the garage, which keeps the garage private from outside viewing. Additional windows along the north side could interfere with the rainwater storage and other usefulness of the garage. It is not a typical standard for garages to have multiple windows, in part for security reasons, so this part of the condition doesn't serve as a functional addition to this design. Next is the porch and deck on the southern facade. The angled posts are set at a 90-degree angle to the roof and were added to provide a dynamic element to this design. Adding additional enclosure area for privacy and wind screening would block the views for this house and is not warranted, since the design has created a protected fenced area on the north side of the home. Therefore, we must respectfully disagree with staff's subjective design opinion, which is also not consistent with most homes in Morro Bay with west-facing patios or decks. To that end, I would ask that the Commission delete condition number 14. Next is green building. We have presented the Commission with a list attached to your report of energy efficient and green building components for this house, so I'm not going to go any further details on that, and I believe staff has answered your questions about the solar system on that. I do, however, want to discuss condition number 22 and the requirement to exceed Title 24 standards by 25%. Previously, the Planning Commission had asked this applicant in the project area to target 20% above Title 24. In addition to other projects around the city that have been approved with this increase to Title 24 standards have usually been set at 20%. So in all fairness, this project should be conditioned at 20% for consistency with other projects. The Title 24 report that is attached to your report shows an increase of 26% for this project. However, implementing the 25% standard would only provide a 1% margin. California Building Code has changed over the years and now is requiring more energy-efficient components as standard items. As the code changes more and more, it makes it much more difficult to propose additional elements to exceed the base standards, especially given such a small margin to work with. For comparison purposes, we consulted with Michelle Dunn, who prepared the Title 24 for this project, and asked what the differences were in the code from 2008, because this is when the project was approved. She said that the current code, 2016, is approximately 64% more stringent than the 2008 code for the Climate Zone 5. So in other words, this house, as approved, proposed, is significantly more efficient than it would have been if it was 8 years ago. Furthermore, the Energy Code is moving toward a net zero requirement. If the construction gets delayed and we don't apply for a building permit until 2019, this requirement would then require us to be 25% above net zero. The condition as written is overly restrictive, and we are asking the Commission to set the standard at 20% above Title 24 to be uniform with other projects and to allow for some reasonable margin as the Energy Code changes and it incorporates these components into a regular code, preventing this project from meeting its objectives. The last item I'd like to discuss tonight is regarding the development limit line on the final map. Staff informed us last Friday afternoon that the building envelope line on the frontage along the cul-de-sac is not consistent with the final track map additional map sheet. The map sheet shows a 16-foot wide utility easement inside the property boundary, and then the building envelope line at 18 feet back from the easement line, which makes the front building envelope line at 34 feet from the property line. The plans, as approved, have drawn a 20-foot setback from the back of pavement as allowed in the conditions of approval number 18 for the track map, which equates to a building envelope line at 14 feet rather than 18 feet from the easement line. Hence, we are left with a conflicting front setback line from the conditions of approval in the final map. Staff has told us that the final map, as drawn, is the line we must adhere to, so the plans as presented are encroaching into this front building envelope area by 4 feet. I will also say the situation is further complicated by the fact that the final track map shows the rear building envelope line at 50 feet from the rear property line. However, staff is now requiring that the rear setback be 65 feet from the property line. We can agree to disagree on several things regarding these lines, but I must say that the project and the final track map was reviewed for conformity with the local coastal plan and other city codes and could only have been approved if it was found consistent with the LCP, which was in 2009 and then also in 2014. At this time, staff is recommending that the project should be redesigned and cut 4 feet off of this home. I'm not entirely certain why a change to the front building envelope line cannot be accommodated or supported, since the city has certainly modified the rear building envelope line from the line drawn on the final track map. If it's about open space, then the proposed project provides more open space with this current proposal than as drawn on the final map, since the rear building envelope line is now 15 feet inward and the front would only change by 4 feet. Additionally, a 4-foot reduction in this home will require a complete redesign, including a revised Title 24 report. The applicant has worked long and hard to present a home that fits within the guidelines, and to require a modification at this point for an immaterial reason is certainly not in the spirit of the original intent for this subdivision to provide housing and open space. The 4-foot open space adjustment is along the street side and does not pose any risk to habitat or change the character of the development. Nonetheless, I would rather not get into a lengthy discussion on what happened 8 years ago and why the building envelope line was not drawn as per the conditions of approval, nor do I want to place fault on anyone who has worked on this project, including staff, for any misplaced or misinterpreted action previously. I would, however, like to offer a simple solution to this situation. This building envelope can be changed by a, quote, certificate of correction, end quote, which is a text amendment on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that is recorded and will follow the map. I think at this time it is more important to correct both the rear and the front lines so that this project can move forward without any more delays or concerns. With that said, I would ask the Commission's support to adjust the building envelope line as presented and to add a condition of approval that this building envelope line adjustment be complete in a format acceptable by law and recorded prior to issuance of building permit. This concludes my presentation, and on behalf of the applicant, I would respectfully request your support for the proposed home as we have presented tonight. I'm available for questions. The project architect is here with me, and also the project applicant. And I'll make one quick comment on the map sheet. The map sheet is orientated correctly to the north and to the south. I know I went over several different things with the conditions of approval in our request, so what I've done is taken the conditions that I talked about this evening, put them verbatim on this sheet, and then put our corrections on there. So I brought 10 copies, so there's enough for staff and the Planning Commission, so if you weren't able to write everything down while I was talking, I've got it here for you. Thanks, I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathy. Do we have additional speakers? Additional public comment? Okay. At this point, I'll bring it back to the commission here and leave public comment open. So, okay, do we have any questions for the applicant? Jesse.
Okay, so I'm having a rough time reconciling what I've heard. So it sounds like staff and the applicant disagree on the dimensions of the lot? Am I understanding that correctly?
So there's the map exhibit that's up on the board right now has some interesting things, that are shown on it. It has this.
Sorry, just a second, Scott. Was that for staff or was that for the applicant?
That was for staff, I suppose.
Okay, well, and we can bring them up too. We can talk about it. I'm fine with that.
Kathy, why don't you come up to the podium?
I have no problem talking back and forth with Kathy. So we have this interesting line here that it says 54 feet. So I'm not even sure what that was supposed to be measuring to, because it measures 52 feet to the property line. You have a note up here that talks about the setback being from edge of bank. But anytime you're doing the extra setback, it's from the edge of the nearest bank. not the furthest bank, on the opposite side of what will be the drainage. So we have some things on this map exhibit. So this is a second page to the actual map that was recorded. So this was recorded, and it has what, in my opinion, what would be an error on it. We do have conditions that reflect the setback information that's on the front, though, about where things are supposed to be set back from. So there is a little bit of a problem there, and I don't know that a map correction would actually be appropriate for this. Usually, it's to change clear errors on the map, and it wouldn't address this on the front.
Right, because I'm looking at AC1, and it looks like there's 2 feet missing. So we're talking about a 14-foot front yard setback. Well, I'm not quite sure what it is I'm looking at. So the property line is the dotted line, right? On AC1?
On C1. Yes, this doesn't. C1 doesn't show. You have the other page. You have the other one that shows the. Do you have C2 on the slides? Let me go to. Oh, was that? Okay. Yeah, that has the 50-foot. So when they put the map together, they did their topo and they put it together correctly, and they show the correct edge of bank, and then the correct setback is 50 feet. They show it here. The issue that we end up running into is the setbacks from over here, and that was what's shown on that other page that you had with the green and red on it, Cindy.
Which is 20, right?
Well, the setback is shown on there. I think this dimension is 20 feet, but it's really the requirements to what you have to be set back from. So go to that one with the green and red outlines on it that you put together. And so we have the, you can't even see it on this. I don't have the right page. Where's that one? This has it on here.
So maybe I can just offer up something really quickly while Scott's looking at that is, I talked to the surveyor about this correction, and he offered this certificate of correction. The conditions of approval from the track map specifically stated the front setback shall be 20 feet from the back of the pavement. There's a 16-foot utility easement there. The map was drawn at 18 feet for the open space, which made it 4 feet further, so like 24 feet from the back of the curb. So there is a problem with the way that the final map was drawn on the front setback, because if we adhered to the track map conditions at being 20 feet from the back of the pavement, the project that we've given you this evening would meet that requirement. So we believe that that 4-foot difference can be made up with a map correction. And I think at the same time, we should, if we're going to be doing the front, then we should also do the rear and correct the rear so that in the future that there isn't any problems with the rear line as well. So I'm offering up a simple solution, and at this point in time, the surveyor told me there's a certificate of correction, but the way that I'm asking for the condition to be put into the project is any legal way. So if the city finds out that there's a better method to do this legally, then we can go down that path without actually identifying it has to be the certificate of correction.
Kathy, let me ask a question
And
to
from
you.
staff standpoint, happy to go look into it. We just need to look through the conditions of approval for the track and then match that all up.
What condition do we have on the rest of the lots?
Right now.
Do we have the same situation on the other 9 lots?
Possibly. We haven't looked at that closely because we have not looked at designing these other houses. So, it may be something, but since we're here for the approvals on this specific project, then it would be kind of difficult for us to, fold everything in. I think if you would support this project and approve it the way that it's been presented, then we can move forward with this. And then if we find the mechanism that's appropriate to correct the map or amend the map or whatever you want to say, then we can go to the city separately for the rest of the tract. Now, the other side of the tract, the easement, I think, is 14 feet for lots like 9, 10, 9, and 8. So we really need to take a look at that a little closer and figure out and deal with that, I think, separately.
So, Scott, sorry that I'm taking over here. Which would, according to staff, what would be the best way to amend? It seems like we have a conflict
so
of documents.
the project needs to be continued.
Yeah.
Should not be approving it tonight.
Right.
There's way too many moving parts. But Kathy brings up several issues related to conditions that she'd like to see changed. You should absolutely talk about that because as we go through to correct what we're looking to correcting either the map or they need to change the design, whatever that is. It would be good to know about the conditions and what you think about them, because then we can take notes on those and work that out, as well, and have that come back. And so the resolution would be reflective of this as opposed to having, several changes happen at the meeting. So I'd be interested in having that discussion at some point this evening.
Okay. Who set top of bank? Who delineated top of bank?
That was in the conditions of approval for the final tract map.
And that was delineated and surveyed?
It's delineated on here.
Yes. It was. It was surveyed back in 2008, I believe it was. The project biologist went out with Mike Hill from the Department of Fish and Game, because Fish and Game really, now Fish and Wildlife, is really the one that sets the criteria for top of bank, because that will give the delineation whether they need a stream bed alteration permit or not. So we did it in conjunction with Fish and Game.
Okay, because according to the topo on the maps, it looks like you're about the middle of the bank is where the delineation is.
On the track map sheet, but the plans that we've given you tonight for review, we just recently went out with the project biologist and had him look at that. So we are more comfortable that we're telling you the more accurate location for that is the plans that you have tonight.
Okay. Michael, you have questions?
I just want to say this was a really visionary project. I was on the Planning Commission when this went through before, and I think Commissioner Lure was as well. And my sense was there was a lot of grading to put the cul-de-sac in, if I remember right. So I'm just wondering, is anyone aware of any changes due to the nature of the construction of the cul-de-sac or during the benching out of those lots? Because my understanding, if I remember right, is there was a reasonable amount of change of grades, especially on the upper eastern or whatever we're talking, the farther away from Route 1 lots was pretty substantial to get the cul-de-sac in up there.
Yes.
And I remember discussing trying to get the width of the road as narrow as possible, and the fire department had quite a lot to say about that.
Yes.
But I guess my concern is that we're not talking, I just want to make sure that we're talking about things that have been verified in the field as opposed to something that was a pre-construction tract issue. These are, if we're representing things here that your biologist has shown from a field documentation, that's the thing that's critical to me. I guess my perspective is if the easement changed in any kind of way or in the nature of the construction of the street, anything changed, that because it's a private street, so that ownership line is not the public right of way, it's the middle of the joint owned street coming back.
Yes.
So I don't think there's any problem on my part of modifying whatever's in the front. I just want to make sure we haven't compromised anything about the ESHA in the back.
I think what we're doing is accurately showing it now, and then you have the easements that are in place in the front, which is sort of where you get the numbers there, and a little bit of the break.
So just to follow up on that a little bit, so the project biologist went out on the site was August of this year, I believe it was. So when the architect was drawing these plans and making the revisions for us to get it to you, he based his design on what the project biologist had said from his site visit in August. He also we submitted to the city, when we did the cul-de-sac improvements, we had to submit an as-built civil set to the city. So he used his design based on the as-built civil set. So we feel a lot more comfortable telling you tonight that the plans that you have are accurate than, what we're seeing from here, because it appears that, 8-9 years ago when we were trying to do this, and then when we did the final map, and then the city council finally approved it, and then they put additional conditions on there, so just everything didn't get transferred over.
Kathy, has the top of bank or has the ESHA changed, because of the grading and because of the
No.
the
So
site
all the grading,
profiling?
when they did the tract improvements, they were conditioned to stay away from it. They had to put in a construction fence to stay so that they couldn't get into that particular area, so they did stay away. And all the construction, the tract improvements were all basically done in the middle, and any kind of the ash is really onto the northern side of the project in that drainage channel there. So that would not have changed. And we did have a verification letter from the biologist. In fact, I think we had 2 letters that we gave to the city, that his site visit to confirm that there wasn't any riparian vegetation that was within 50 feet of this as well. So we didn't have to worry about the riparian vegetation in this particular lot.
Okay, so just to clarify for me, so the top of bank here, which is, which we're measuring off of to get our setback for the ESHA.
Yes.
Okay. To me, that top of bank looks essentially in the middle of that topo grade, and the grade breaks at the top of the pad. So was that section,
Well,
was that added? I know that pad was raised. Was that added at the time of grading?
That didn't have any bearing on it, because the Fish and Game has a specific definition of how you
Okay.
calculate top of bank. So the same project biologist that went out with the Department of Fish and Game back in 2008 or 2009, whatever it was, is the same project biologist that we have today. So we've had one consistent biologist. So he takes the definition. So he took where he had pulled up his 2008 notes and looked at that for his conversation with the biologist from Fish and Game, and so he's transferred everything forward so he can conclude that it was done. And I am not aware that any of that pad was pushed back to create any difference in the top of bank. So just because we have a slope doesn't mean that the top of bank is at the top of the slope.
Okay. Then the way I'm seeing this, we've got the discrepancy between staff and the applicant is we have 4 feet along the front side of the property. We're pretty well established that this setback from ESHA is correct.
Yeah, I think we're good there. I think the only issue we have is the exhibit that was associated with the map and recorded,
Right.
where it calls out the top of bank, and it's clearly not accurate or correct. It's unclear what it was measuring from because it stopped at the property line. So.
Okay, so then we're dealing with a 4-foot discrepancy on the front side,
Yes.
and staff is saying that it's 4 foot less than what the applicant is saying. Is that a correct appropriation of what the difference is?
I think we all agree that there's a 4-foot break.
Right. And I think that, it's trying to go back to what happened, 8 years ago. So rather than trying to rehash and try to figure it out, what we're doing is we're asking for the Planning Commission's support to let us do a correction so that we can have the 4 feet as it's presented tonight, but at the same time, fix the rear line as well, so we don't set anybody up in the future for any additional problems.
Okay. Any other questions? Joe? Jesse, you got it nailed?
Okay, so as I understand it, staff wants to continue to allow the applicant to cut 4 feet off the building.
So that's where we were at before. The conversation and the items that Kathy's brought up this evening have not been discussed with staff that I'm aware of, but maybe they were. Okay. So a lot of this is new information and not things that we've really gone over, other than just being handed out now and then they're suggesting the map correction. It could be possible, maybe it's not. I don't really know until I go back and look at the overall map, look at the easements, and look at the conditions of approval. And I'm not going to do that here tonight. So we would need to continue it so staff could do that. And maybe there's other ways to do it, or maybe the way that Kathy suggests is correct. I'm not sold one way or the other. We probably need to spend a little more time on this to fix the 4-foot break.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do.
Okay, why don't we, I think is what's suggested, let's review the rest of the project. Let's give our input on some of the changes that you're requesting and some of the other issues with the project or, features of the project.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, we love that.
So we'll leave the public comment open. So if we have more questions for you, Kathy, or for some of the experts, we'll bring that up. Michael?
Yeah, I don't have trouble personally with the reduced front if that's the way it resolves. I think the front yard is the biggest waste of space that we have. Something like this, the ESHA is the feature, and the house has a nice relationship to the ESHA, and in terms of what the house is using the ESHA for, and I think it doesn't compromise the ability to park away from the street. So I don't have too much of a problem with that. I do think it should have the solar. I'm surprised. It looks like a tanked water heater. I'm surprised the energy thing works with a tanked water heater instead of a tankless. But the trash thing. I don't know what we're going to be doing with trash down the line. It's hard to make We've gone to the small container for the landfill and the large green waste, and I don't know what the future holds for that. But as long as I don't know how to put it, but I think we should. And the intention was to not have them out and exposed. So if it's inside in this plan, that's fine. We just can't have the next owner taking them outside because they don't want to have them inside the garage. So that's a bit of an issue. The one thing I would just say from capturing my own rainwater is 400 gallons is going to get like this. That's like a half-inch event with this kind of roofscape, I think. If you're going to do it inside, you have to have a mechanism to relieve the beyond 400-gallon materials somehow. So I'm surprised it's inside. I'm not opposed to it being inside, but I know how mine react to our storm events, and I would say maybe it might be better outside. I don't have trouble with the angled columns. I think the house is pretty austere, which I'm a kind of austere person with a lot of the way the things look. I do have a concern. I think in our design guidelines we talked about garage doors since the design of this subdivision was put together, and it does strike me that I don't think staff's idea about another window is necessarily something I'm concerned about, but I do think that type of garage door is lesser than our design guidelines is talking about now. I think some kind of, I don't know all vision panels, but some kind of vision panel in the garage door might help a bit. I have no problem with the color scheme. I don't have any trouble with the landscaping. But I'm happy to see one get built. I think it's a very nice plan. I like the plan a lot. And if it's got solar, I'm happier.
Okay. Joseph?
Yeah, this original plan predates my seat on the Planning Commission, so I'm really learning about this for the first time. And I was really impressed by the design guidelines and how thoughtful and comprehensive they were. And I sort of made a note that I'm going to keep this as a reference, and we can sort of think about other areas of Morro Bay incorporating some of these things. Now, having said that, this is a very visible project. It's a very visible location, and the first of presumably 9 houses that will be in clear view by probably every citizen of Morro Bay. And everybody's going to have a lot of opinions about it. And given what I perceive is sort of among certain citizens of Morro Bay, sort of reluctance to have change or see change, to sort of head off that kind of criticism, I think it's really essential that everything in the guideline be met or even exceeded so that it cuts off criticism. And as Commissioner Lucas was saying, to also prevent this sort of gradual erosion that exceptions produce, exception here and an exception on the next development, and we might find ourselves departing significantly from what the original concept was. So I think it's, and I'm not suggesting that you're not fulfilling the demands of the guideline, but I just think it's really essential that we do that. So and I was pleased to hear that the issue of the fence was going to be taken care of. The driveway, I hadn't really thought critically about the driveway, but looking at the design, the narrowing of the driveway doesn't seem to prohibit in any significant way use of the garage, but it probably inhibits using the driveway pad for additional parking. And given the narrowness of that street, it's probably a good idea to have some additional parking. So I'm fine with keeping the driveway wider. The issue of the additional window on the garage, yeah, I'm sympathetic to the notion of privacy, and particularly, and if that wall that would otherwise be used with the window in it has other functions, that seems to make sense to me. So I think I'm in this situation. I'm okay with that. With respect to the ESHA area and the top of the bank, there doesn't seem to be any disagreement here, but I think we should really enforce that to the full extent, and that the building envelope needs to be set back to accommodate the necessary distance from the top of the bank. And likewise, and also particularly, I'd like this particular scrutiny to the vegetation and the planning, because again, we have to make sure that it's the property is screened as was anticipated, because certainly in the early days after construction, it's going to be very obvious, and we want to be able to truthfully say that we are sort of screening portions of the construction. And with respect to the diagonal post, I spent a lot of time looking at that and drawing alternative horizontal columns and the like. And my personal preference is for the horizontal, for the vertical columns. But I realized since I spent so much time pondering this, that it was just particular to me, and that reasonable minds could differ. So, I'm fine. A diagonal post is certainly fine then, because I don't want to impose my particular taste. What else? I noted that there was, I believe it was an 18-foot height restriction, and that the property is something like 2 inches below that, which to me causes a sense of warning. Again, I'll go back to the notion that we really should accommodate all the design elements. So just to make certain at the various stages of construction that height limit is being observed, knowing full well that if some subcontractor makes a mistake, whether in the construction of the foundation or the framing of the roof, that we will insist that it be within 18 feet, and 2 inches isn't much of a margin of error. I think that's all I really have to say right now.
Okay. Richard?
When I looked at this, and it being that it's the first one, it makes me nervous when I see a lot of red in the conditions and stuff, where we're taking red lettering, where we got variances. I think that it'd be, we don't want to set a precedent, because this is going to be something that can be like, well, this guy did it, then we should be able to do it, okay? I'm not zeroing in on anything in particular right here, but generally, yeah? That said, I got a question, okay? If you're going to put solar panels on this place, yeah? They would be going, like looking at that roof, they'd be going right on top of that roof, yeah? And then when you're driving down the highway, that's when you're coming around, all, based on that, the reflection and all that is taken into account from solar?
I think that's the roof that they were proposed on, but I'm not completely sure. Yes?
Okay, 'cause I just wanted to make sure that we kind of take into account like the reflective aspects of it. People hiking up Black Hill and stuff. So we just kind of keep conscientious on that. But I do like putting the solar, and I like the efficiency being forward thinking and keeping it. Try to keep it at the 25% level. I like the overall design. I think it's good, but I think, like the other commissioner said, it's integrated because it's integrated with a pretty cool landscaping plan, and that's how it all works together. And I think that's. We should just be conscientious on that. Regarding the driveway, I agree with Commissioner Graffia. I think that having that wider driveway, having a space to park the cars, I think is of benefit. Regarding the trash, I would not, for me, keeping trash in a garage, it ends up going outside sometimes because of the smell and stuff. So I would not be opposed to maybe some kind of enclosure on the outside. I don't know what kind of variances would be needed for that, but something tasteful there. Yeah, the other thing is that, as the other commissioner mentioned, that the height limit, we should be very sensitive to that, and make sure that that parameter is held tightly.
Jesse?
So I'll just go down the list here, hit these one by one, since she was so nice and Kathy was such a sport to put it together for us. So I agree with her redacting of number 14. I think the architect has a good idea of what they want to see. If the applicant chooses to build that house, unless it's specifically prohibited in one of the conditions of approval, I would say let the architect be the architect. So I'd be in favor of leaving it as is. So number 15, I think we beat that dead horse, so we'll come back to that once Scott has a chance to, once staff has a chance to readdress. I agree with the rest of the commission, it sounds like, on the driveway width.
So I'm going to provide some clarification there. It just has to do with as it transitions away from the approach out. So instead of the driveway coming down and at 20 foot wide the entire way, it flares out to 20 feet. Like it literally right past the driveway can go out to that thing. It's just the way it's shown, it's at 20 feet the whole entire width. So most of the driveway would be 20 feet wide minus when you transition over based on how the conditions of the track read.
So it'd be
I don't know if it matters. I'm just saying that's what it's suggesting. It's not a huge change to it. It's just they had it 20 foot wide coming down the entire way, and what it says is it can't go 20 foot wide until you get past the transition. So we just conditioned it consistent with the conditions of approval for the track, and so that you could literally go out of the transition and out. So that was the only real. This wasn't. I mean, this is a minor thing.
I was going to say staff and applicants should be able to.
It wasn't a big deal. It sounded. You're taking it as being a much bigger deal than we really were. It wasn't. We didn't have a big problem with it. It was just the conditions of approval set was very specific that you shouldn't have it a 20-foot ride until you get out past the transition. So we're like, when they brought it down all the way at that width, and we were like, oh, you're not supposed to do it specifically like that. So I don't. For what it's worth.
Right. So that's a minor thing. I think you guys should be able to work all that out on your the trash. I wasn't quite sure I understood what was being proposed on the trash, the garbage store, the refuse storage outside of the garage. Are we talking about an appendage, an architectural appendage in the setback?
So we didn't put a condition here that said you actually had to remove it. The way the condition reads is you just have to have all of the stuff that's in the garage outside of the 20 by 20 clear space. So they could, I mean, it talks about it in the staff report about doing that, but that's not the way we conditioned it. The idea was maybe that you could put it outside and have someplace located someplace outside, but they end up being pushed up right against on that far side where it wouldn't be visible. They end up being pushed right up against the setback line there, which is one of the problems. So that's probably why they didn't want to do it. But they could keep it inside if they wanted to. We just want to make sure that they're keeping the clear 20 by 20 parking area. Whatever they want to put in the garage that's beyond that's kind of up to them.
So Scott, it's just a question. Is the dotted line in the garage, is that the 20 by 20? They didn't dimension
unclear
it?
to me. It might be. I didn't see a dimension, so
9 foot by 18 foot.
Come to the...
So that's why Whitney pointed it out. She put a scale on it and said it's not 20 by 20, and so that was in the way, based on what he was saying.
It's 2 spaces, 9 by 18, so we can add more. And according to the architect, if we move the water heater, then he can create the 20 by 20 clear. And if while I'm up here for talking about the trash, Jesse, in the design manual, the design guidelines that we have, it says that you have to screen the trash and you have to have an enclosure for the trash if it's outside, and it has to be attached to the garage. So that's part of one of the design manual requirements or design guideline requirements. So rather than building a separate enclosure attached to the garage outside, we put the trash inside.
And that makes sense because, putting it in the setback, we have building issues, we have 3-foot setback issues, real building code issues. So I would encourage that to be...
Again, we internally have no issue with it. Whitney noted when she put a scale on that thing that it wasn't 20 by 20. And so she said, you just need to keep your stuff out of this. However you decide to do that, it's kind of up to you.
Right.
Yeah, and I would just add the 9 by 18, that's referring to outdoor parking, like, in a parking lot in a commercial. But our residential parking requirements are minimum 20 by 20 free and clear from interior walls.
Okay, so I'm just get through this here. So 22, I agree with, I think everybody else is saying the 25%, that was forward thinking. I don't see a reason to step back. I think in the next code cycle, I know we're going to get even more intensive with our energy requirements. So I don't really support reducing the increase to the energy efficiency standard to 20%. I support the 25%, not the 20%, as proposed by Kathy.
We could, as an aside, we could tie it to the 2016 building code if you want. That's the concern they had.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. It just occurred to me when she was speaking, and that would address their issue, and it would adding a couple words. If you just want to leave it the way that it is, that's fine too. I just was thinking about that.
Well, the application date, I don't know what the application date was, but so that energy code went into effect in July, I want to say, of 2015. So that, I don't know when the application date of this residence was anyway. So, I mean, anyway, the Title 24 stuff got kind of weird because we adopted a new code in 2016. It went into effect 2017, but we didn't. Well, anyway, so the energy stuff, I would encourage as energy efficient as you could possibly get. That 25% isn't really hard to hit. The solar should, if you include that in the residence, I would imagine that Michelle Dunn should be able to work that out to where the 25% isn't a hard target to hit. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. And the height limit, I'm not sure the policy on inspections.
Condition 7 has the height certification requirements, and we get it at foundation and then at framing.
I was going to say, at foundation, if we're not getting at foundation, we should be, so.
Yeah, so we do it at both.
One thing I want to say about that is it's not to the applicant's advantage to mess up the heights when they're trying to sell the lots uphill behind this.
And the last thing, I just wanted to, I would encourage a solution that doesn't throw the whole street off. I mean, I'd prefer everybody had the same front yard setback all the way down the street, so that's my 2 cents.
We're going to try to work something out that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, again, this is something that came up after we'd released the staff report and stuff. It would have been great if we thought we had it all worked out, because that map was weird, and we looked at it several different times, and then really we started working backwards from the easement side of things, and we realized, no, we got a problem. It's a way to bring it up. I mean, I apologize for it, just because the exhibits that were associated with the subdivision were not correct. And we thought we had it dialed in when they gave us the corrected map showing the edge of bank, and then we started working it back from the other side after the fact, and we realized, nope, we have a bust in the numbers. And apologize for that. Would have liked for that to happen internally without you seeing it first, but sometimes that happens.
And I would love to see a map with a surveyor's stamp on it next time, maybe, so we have some definitive.
Okay. My basic impressions on the project are really good. There was a major attempt to follow the design guidelines that were set forth, and I think this is going to be, a benefit to that once this gets built out. There are some issues I have with the project and the design guidelines, other than the issues that were brought up tonight. In going through the design guidelines again, I didn't see any percentage of screening from the road. Scott, did I miss that, or I thought we had a screening percentage from the highway or from the road? There was a requirement for the landscaping. Right.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know. I'd have to look that up. It's not something that's ringing a bell, but there's a lot of things in the approval. So.
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to look into if it's not specifically stated in the design guidelines, that we should have a screening, especially from Highway 1, and so that you can adjust the screening better so that you can get your views from the site and still be screened from the highway. So I think that's something that's easily done. And quite frankly, I was really disappointed in the landscape plan. It seems like there was a lot of problems with it. There wasn't a legend to tell you what the plants were. So basically, it was just a cartoon. And the trees they stated were not that were in the landscape plan were not trees that were not stated as trees in the design guidelines. They were stated as shrubs and the allowable plant materials. So that landscape plan needs a lot of work, and it needs to be coherent and readable.
Are you saying that it needs to identify each like what plant and what tree and what size gallon and all that stuff?
Right.
Oh, okay.
And the symbols need to be there. They've got the symbols
Yeah.
as a plan, but they don't have a legend for what those symbols state.
Okay.
What those symbols are. They've got a plant list, but they don't correlate to the plan.
Okay.
So as far as I could see. So if I'm wrong, I'd like to be corrected. Okay. So screening from the view corridor of Highway 1, I think, is really critical and needs to be taken into account on the landscape plan. So also there was supposed to be a design review committee for the subdivision, and was there a design guide? Was there a letter of approval from this ARC for
Well, the ARC at this point is actually the owner,
right?
because we don't have any houses out there yet.
Okay, well, it was supposed to be two professionals and one owner. So how was that set up?
You're absolutely correct, but it also says in the CC&Rs until one of the lots is sold,
Okay.
the applicant acts as the design review committee, and since it was the same architect, the CC&Rs allowed us to do what we're doing tonight without having a design review committee, essentially is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, great.
We were tracking that.
Also, it's talking about ventilation and windows, and they're talking about operatable windows for cross ventilation. From my reading on the window schedule, the clerestories and the upper windows on the rake walls are non-operable. They're fixed, and I didn't see on the Title 24 that there was a HVAC system, only an FAU system. So I think it would be due diligence to have those clerestories operable, and possibly any other skylights have them operable too, because that really allows for you to extend the season where you don't need to bring cooling in because of the ventilation and the exiting of the heat in the building. So I would strongly recommend that. It's cheap. It's a cheap fix. Also in the drainage section, 8.5.2, they talk about porous pavements are required rather than poured concrete. So on the patio sections, I see those from the site plans as being poured concrete. So I think those need to be shipped out to a porous pavement. And then also, I think one of the features that should be looked into on this is, I think it is even mentioned in the design guidelines, is to plumb for future solar thermal hot water. So locate that and show that on the plans, please. And then I think also we need to locate to have the location of the PV system and the basic size. I think you called out a 4.1 kW system, which I think is adequate for this, but I think it needs to be located on the plan, and probably even over over the garage roof as closest to the meter, and it needs to be thought out and pre-wired prior to roofing, so that you don't have conduits snaking across this roof. So that needs to be considered. And going through Kathy's list here, and thank you for supplying that. I don't have a problem with whatever way you want to set those posts. That's fine with me. I think the overall design follows what we were trying to portray in the design guidelines. It's basically a sea ranch style house, and I think that blends into that undulating hills in the background, and I think that modulates the massing really nicely. And then number 15 is just no development outside the building envelope. So we just need to figure out what the building envelope is. And for that, I'm dead set that the setbacks from the ESHA should be maintained and should be maintained to the condition prior to grading of the tract. So the driveway width and surface, I don't have a problem with the transition strips being wider than the driveway, so I don't think that's a big deal. We need 20 for 21 for the garage. We need 20 by 20 clear space, and whether you put the trash inside or outside, if you put it inside, it's going to be outside. It's as soon as that trash can has a couple weeks use on it, people are not going to want it stinking up their car. So I think there's plenty of room on this building envelope to find a place for a trash enclosure, and it needs trash enclosure there because of you're right next to an ESHA and wildlife habitat, and you've got the raccoon highway going right by there, so you're going to be picking up trash otherwise. I'm all for keeping the 25%, but I think, as Scott mentioned, I think pegging it to a date, either the 25% over 2016, title, CAC 24 requirements would be fine, or the highest efficiency of present code, and not to go below, which we can't do, below the latest building code, but no less than 25% over, say, 2016 code would be my suggestion on that. And I think that hits all the marks, unless I'm missing one. Does anybody else have any further comment? Kathy, do you have any more clarifications you'd like?
Yeah, I wrote myself some notes here and see if I can follow along, so maybe I can be a little bit helpful. See, Michael, you were asking about the trash cans and then the future. It's part of the design manual and the CCNRs, so when somebody moves into one of these houses, they're going to be presented with these documents so that they know that they have to follow the rules. There's only 10 houses up there, and if people get mad because somebody's got their trash can out in front of their garage and leaves it there, then they're going to have all the right to complain and deal with that. Solar is a part of the project, so definitely want to make sure that we get that square. There's no problem with that. Water heater, according to the notes that I've got, that was when Michelle was doing the Title 24, she was saying that the, let's see if I get to the right page here. High efficiency tankless water heater, 96% uniform energy factor with water-saving push-button demand control for efficient hot water recirculation. A dedicated return loop to the water heater saves water from running down the drain while waiting for hot water. Pump purges cold water quickly from the line. The water heater does not fire unnecessarily. Only fires when there's demand from the user and when the water is in insulated piping is no longer hot. This is a voluntary measure. Water saving is not included in Title 24, but there is a small little penalty taken out of the Title 24 for the pumping energy. So I want to let you know about the water heater on that one. As far as Joseph, on the parking, by the design manual, we need to provide guest parking in the driveway. So that was there for my comment about keeping the driveway width open, because we do have to delineate a guest parking space in the driveway in front of the garage. Let's see what else I've got. I already mentioned the design. Any of the design elements for the future are all going to be part of the CCNR, so if somebody buys a lot and wants to develop them themselves, it's not the applicant that's here tonight doing that, then they're going to have the CCNRs and the design manual that they're going to need to follow. Richard, just a little comment that what the sheet that I gave you, the text that is in red is the planning or staff's text that will stay. So we're not My changes are in the black text, and I added a couple of things in the blue. So just because you see a lot of red doesn't mean that it's changed. We're agreeing with the staff that the condition would stay that way, and I gave you the strike through. So I just wanted to make sure that we're square that way, so you don't think we did something wrong. Let's see what else I got. The design guidelines we're going to have to watch with vegetation for the screening for the highway, because we do have some limits on the height of the vegetation in the area, because it was designed to make sure that it wasn't going to, not this big tall tree was going to go up and block the neighbor's view. So we will have to be conscientious about when we look at that.
Yeah, I think that
And then
trees, excuse me, Kathy, I think the trees were limited to the building height limitation too. So the
Yeah, I think it's been a while since I looked at that section, but yeah, I think so. We're going to be dealing with that issue too. And then I understand also for, Jerry, for you, is the skylights that are in there are operable.
Okay.
So we do have that. And I think we've got the rest of the notes that we got from the commission tonight. I think maybe between all of us, but while I was here and had the opportunity, I wanted to clarify just a couple of things so that the commission didn't walk away thinking that we had not done something tonight, and we had already. So I appreciate your time tonight.
Okay, thanks. And I appreciate the back and forth. I think we can solve the problems easier this way rather than submittal, critique, resubmittal. This way we can get things through and get them moving forward.
No, this was great.
Yeah.
From staff.
So, staff, do you have anything that you need to add or would like to?
I think we have pretty good, pretty clear direction from the Planning Commission. Thank you for providing all the input. I thank the applicant for providing the written comments related to what they want. That's a lot easier for the commission to review. So that's fantastic. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I think we're good. I think we have direction, and we should be able to, when we bring it back, have something for you ready for approval. So, yeah.
Okay, do we have somebody who would like to propose a motion here?
I move we continue to a date certain or uncertain.
Wow.
So originally, the staff's recommendation was to continue it to a date certain to avoid having to renotice it. But that's subject to the applicant feeling that they would have information ready to go on a particular date. So we might want to pull the applicant up
So,
and
Kathy,
see, like,
would you-
what
Sure, go ahead.
thanks.
Is it like February or March?
So that's what I was talking about. So I don't know how long it's going to take to resolve the setback issue. That's the thing that I'm concerned. The other stuff we'll work to a point, and have everything else done. That's all pretty simple. But resolving where that building footprint is and resolving resolving the issues that are on the map might take longer.
Is that going to take an amendment to the tract map?
You can, as Kathy referenced, you can do a letter of correction for certain items. And she said the surveyor looked at it and said, hey, this might be one of them. So it might be, it's just there's easements and other things that have the conditions reference as well, and you can't do it for that. So there's other issues potentially there that I'm not familiar enough with the track conditions to say. So that's the thing I'm kind of concerned about is from a timing standpoint.
Okay, yeah, so I guess, so from our perspective, we can get back and we request a second meeting in January. So if, we can do that, and I suppose that if we run into a staff.
I don't think that's a possibility, even remotely. We won't have staff even here for that. So Cindy won't be here, Winnie won't be here. She's done at the end of the year. So, and I don't know that we can resolve that issue that fast. So.
So maybe I would ask that could we enable to get this project moving forward so that the applicants aren't, waiting any longer, if we could write the condition, as I suggested tonight, that whatever legal method it is to do that, and if we find out afterwards for some reason we can't, then we'd have to come back and amend the project with you with a design. But if we, because otherwise we're getting held up.
Yeah, I see a problem with that because we're talking about 4-foot building. That could be.
Right.
I'm not comfortable with that tonight.
Yeah,
my recommendation would absolutely not be to do that. I think we need to continue. I think we need to continue as your date uncertain. I know they want it to be specific. I can promise you that we'll work toward getting it on the soonest agenda that we can. I just don't know what the resolution is going to be, and we have to jump into it and look into it. So we'll bring it back as soon as we can.
What's our noticing? We need 2 weeks noticing?
10 days.
Yeah.
10 days. So if we have a solution that seems to be working, we can definitely put it on the
We'd
next
like to
meeting.
be done with it too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, you know, I like to keep a whole bunch of projects hanging around.
Right.
I think once we have a resolution to that, I'll know better, but that's the thing that I'm concerned about the most because it deals with the map.
Okay. I think that's the critical issue too.
I mean, it's not ideal, and we had originally thought we wanted it to a date certain too, but I'm not real comfortable doing that.
Okay. So, Michael?
So I would
Thank you, Kathy.
move coastal development permit and conditional use permit CPO 543 and UPO 480 continuation to a date uncertain.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, do we have discussion on the motion? No?
Yeah, I'll weigh in here. I'm kind of torn here because I see the applicant's perspective. I would like nothing more than to approve your project today and get you moving, get you building tomorrow. But obviously staff has limitations that we can't work around. I'm torn, but I guess that's my discussion.
Okay. I have full confidence in staff that they're going to try to move you forward as quickly as possible. So, but this is, we're talking about possible track map adjustments and and stuff, and so I see where that could get thorny. So, I can. That's my.
I mean, once we have resolution to that, it's possible that we'd be able to schedule it back sooner rather than later, and pending the outcome of that process. I mean, I'm willing to do that, and that's not a problem for me. So we could do something along those lines once we have the path.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Can we call the question?
Commissioner Lucas?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski?
Aye.
Commissioner Barone?
Aye.
Commissioner Ingraffia?
Aye.
Chairperson Lohr?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Thank you. I'm waiting to see the next one. Okay. Item C, new business. We have none. Unfinished business. We have none. Planning commissioners' comments. Do we have any? Joe?
I'm just wondering if sometime in the future we could explore the notion of limiting the square footage of second stories on homes. I keep thinking about, machinization and corridors of two-story homes and and preserving this sort of small-town atmosphere of Morro Bay, not to mention, viewship and all that. And I was recalling your comments about, how difficult it is to, in any way, ensure kind of a cooperative spirit in sharing the view of the bay. And it's not a very complete solution, but maybe just, limiting the size of a second story might be an easy way to help that out, and also, not. Yes.
Okay. That, just as my comment, that's fraught, a subject that's really fraught, and I think probably best taken up in the specific design guidelines for individual sections in the general plan, because it's so different throughout the county. And this has been approached and attacked and battled over since I moved here. So yeah.
I mean, I understand that the issue of view, entitlement to view is very controversial, but has the notion of just limiting the square footage of a second story?
So we are working on the zoning code portion of it. It's actually going to GPAC on Thursday, and it has some of these types of things in it. The development standards portion of it, or at least a good chunk of it, is going to GPAC, and you'll be seeing it after they're done with it, and it does include things like that in it.
I saw the prototype. There's something in it. I just wonder if we.
Yeah, it has the zoning code module rule related to development standards, and it does speak to that. It has
Yeah.
policies related to that, and and we have policies specific. We called out taking a look at development standards applicable to certain areas in town. Well, in certain areas in town we did it by lot sizes. So they're more specific to the individual lot sizes in town, grouped by where we have noticeable breaks in those square footages, from like the 2,400 to 4,000 and 4,001 and above, and those types of things. So development standards that you'll be seeing after the GPAC is done with it will be reflective of development standards applicable to certain lot sizes, and it does include items that Commissioner Graffia was bringing up. So yeah.
Okay. Jesse, anything?
No.
Our favorite subject before. I just want to wish everybody a safe holiday and Merry Christmas.
And Michael?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to you, Scott, and Cindy, and Joan, and Whitney, and all your staff for the work they did this year.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Convey that.
Yeah, I think I'll second that also, and also wish everybody have some happy holidays and everybody gets home safe. So at this point then, community director's comment.
I'll wish you all happy holidays as well, and to everybody out there watching, if there are any still. And I don't have anything beyond that. We have, I think, one item on our next agenda so far, so it'll probably be a relatively short meeting, the one that we have on the 2nd.
So January 2nd.
So, yeah.
Okay, with that, we'll adjourn to the next regular Planning Commission meeting at the Veterans Memorial Building at 209 Surf Street on January 2nd, 2018 at 6 p.m. Happy holidays, everybody.